Now, if you're unsure which players you need to be bringing in for Game Week 16 and which ones you need to be selling over the next few weeks, don't worry, I've got you covered in my transfer targets video today, where we're going to be going through all the key data and highlighting some of my favourite picks for the next few game weeks. Now, as always, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 11,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. First off, let's take a look just individually at Game Week 16 using Fantasy Football Hub's projected goals and clean sheet model. I feel sometimes, people can get lost up looking in terms of good fixtures, bad fixtures coming up, but it is important sometimes just to focus on the next game week ahead. Obviously, we did that last week, and we were obviously looking at that Liverpool game postponed. Some things can happen like that, and I think it is important, especially this week, that has highlighted the issues of early transfers and, of course, waiting for all the information before making those early transfers. That, for me, is the big thing. And you never know what can happen in this game. And that is, I think, why a lot of us do love it. Obviously, looking to next week, no early kickoffs, but plenty of games on Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, the highlight fixtures in terms of captaincy next week, Wolves against Ipswich. So Cunha's definitely going to be a very, very popular asset for that one. Isak against Leicester as well, another appetising fixture if you are thinking about potentially going for him. Liverpool obviously against Fulham, that's an absolutely delightful fixture at home for Mohamed Salah, who realistically could have a week off. I didn't expect him to play the Girona game anyway. He might now be benched for that one in midweek, so could have a full week's rest going into this busy festive period as well, which would be really, really nice. Arsenal against Everton, again, another good fixture for the likes of Bukayo Saka and obviously players like that. City go up against Manchester United, two teams in different form at the moment. Obviously, City on one of their worst runs in recent history, and of course, Manchester United, the new manager, still trying to make things click, still trying to get results the right way. So obviously, that's going to be a really, really interesting game. Spurs against Southampton. Southampton are proving they are the worst team in the league. So, again, probably going to be looking at, if you've still got some Spurs assets left, they should be decent value this game week. And then finally, Chelsea-Brentford as well. Obviously, the likes of Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson. What do we do with Visser? What do we do with Mbeumo as well? Is it time to finally get rid of them? But I feel that Sunday game could be another one that is full of goals for the Bees as well. Currently, the top scoring team within the league. 40 goals, which is absolutely ridiculous. Right, let's move on to the next few game weeks then, using the 11FI data. First off, let's start off with the clean sheet data over the next 5 game weeks. Arsenal are really, really fancied with some great projected numbers over that period, so I feel the investments into Timber, Saliba, Raya, and if Gabriel does play tomorrow, are definitely going to be worth it over the next few weeks. I probably would recommend not picking up a Manchester City defender. I can see that the clean sheet odds here are pretty decent from the 11FI model. However, I do feel like these are potentially, obviously using more historic data, and I feel right at this moment in time, City are really struggling. They can't keep clean sheets. They can't, get things clicking at the moment, so probably going to be an avoid. Liverpool decent across the board, so they could be good value for pickups as well. Chelsea and Bournemouth as well, two teams that I think are full of plenty of cheap, good quality players. Obviously, Chelsea, a little bit more rotation. We saw that in midweek with Maresca making a hatful of changes as well to a lot of the players that we thought were going to be nailed as well. Sanchez, Colwell, that were very, very good from a defensive perspective. So maybe one to consider before you do bring them in. But as you can see, decent numbers across the board. Ipswich as well. Bournemouth as well have some absolutely stupendous fixtures after Ipswich continuing as well. So the likes of Kirkes and Zabania could also be pretty decent pickups over the next week. I think Lewis Hall as well could also be worth a shout with 2 excellent back-to-back fixtures for Newcastle United as well. In terms of teams we probably want to be looking to avoid from a defensive perspective, I don't think any of the bottom 3 are really a shock. Obviously, Everton and West Ham have been pretty rubbish in recent weeks. Everton as well are about to go on this absolutely horrific run as well over the next few. As you can see, really, really low chances of clean sheets. Brentford as well, also their fixtures are starting to tail away, so probably not worth any investment. And after game week 18, I probably would say it is time to, of course, shift on Ait-Nouri, who has again been disappointing in recent weeks. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at the projected goals from the 11-5 model. And it is Liverpool who are leading the way over the next 5 game weeks. Obviously, that match day 18 fixture, the big standout for them with really, really good projected goals. Initially, I probably would have said this could be a week for TCing, but with the postponement now of the Liverpool game, I do feel that is probably going to be the prime time to be using that triple captainship on Mohamed Salah. It means he'll have Everton and then another fixture. If we get it in the right week and it's a really, really good fixture, those that have held that triple captain are going to be in for some huge, huge luck. City's fixtures, I would say 16's decent for projected goals. Obviously, United not great defensively at the moment. 17's difficult, but 18 is really, if they start to get things back underway, is probably the period where Erling Haaland starts to enter the conversation as being one of the best captaincies again. And maybe if you have sold him, this is probably the period where we might be having to look to potentially go and get him back into our sides around match day 18. Arsenal's are pretty decent over the next few as well. So of course, looking at Saka, he's going to be a decent pickup as well. Obviously, the defenders, they're seeming to score from every single corner as well. I highlighted Chelsea and Newcastle in the last section, and again, they also feature on the projected goals list here. Obviously, 16 and 17 are phenomenal fixtures for Newcastle United, and Alexander Isak is going to be one of my top transfer recommendations going into this week. The fixtures post that as well are still pretty decent, of course, if you are looking for a short-term or long-term Haaland replacement in terms of that striking option. Chelsea's are just good across the board and are pretty much entering this phase of amazing, amazing green fixtures. So Palmer, Jackson, all going to be worth it from an attacking standpoint as well. We are also seeing decent numbers across the board for Bournemouth and Brighton as well, with decent fixtures on the horizon for them. And we are seeing a tail off in terms of those Brentford numbers. They have been kind of towards the top echelons over the past few weeks. However, with more difficult games on the horizon, they are seeing a little bit of a dip, as are Wolves and, of course, Nottingham Forest and Everton, who have now gone rock bottom of this list. That was the data from 11-5. Like I said, if you want to go and check it out, I'll leave a link to their amazing website in the description. But let's move on to some players ahead of Game Week 16. Moving on, taking a look at some players I'm going to be recommending you guys take a look at over the next few weeks. Of course, first up, we are going to start off with Alexander Isak. A goal and 2 bonus for him today. I believe that is now 5 in his last 7 or 8 Premier League appearances. Absolutely on fire at the moment. And as you can see, the Newcastle fixtures, I would definitely say over the next 2 to 3 are pretty decent. Leicester and Ipswich, obviously going to be the standouts. We saw that from the 11-5 data. Obviously, Aston Villa still a little bit rocky at the defence, as are Manchester United and as are Tottenham as well. So I do think maybe in the short term, Alexander Isak could be a decent little punt option over this busy festive period. And I do think as well, he's getting himself back into that form that we saw for large parts of last season and is becoming a consistent point scorer and consistent grabber of data as well. If you look over the past few weeks, his underlying data over those 5-6 game weeks since he's been back from injury have been really, really consistent every game that he's been playing. And that's what we want to see. I know a few people obviously will be looking at potential Vissa replacements. Obviously, Cunha's not really been performing over the past few weeks as well. Some people still might have had enough of Erling Haaland and might want a short-term fix. And I do believe Alexander Isak could be that man. I was very, very tempted to go and bring him into my own team this week for Vissa. I'm glad I didn't, but at the same time, it would have still worked out because Isak actually got 1 more point and was absolutely, I thought, really, really good in the game against Brentford today. Obviously, like I said, a home fixture against Leicester and then Ipswich. We saw it with the 11-5 models. There's really, really good projected goals coming up for Newcastle over the next few weeks. And even the tougher games that are on here, they are, for me, playing some of the worst, I would say, kind of top 6 sides, traditional top 6 sides with pretty ropey defences if you look at XG conceded as well. Let's move on then to the next player that I'm going to recommend for you guys. And this one could be this week if obviously you've got rotation for that Arsenal game in game week 17. But it is going to be Daniel Munoz from Crystal Palace. Another goal today. Obviously that's 2 now for him at Crystal Palace. Brighton away, You know, it's a derby, but you never know what could happen in that one. I probably wouldn't play him in the Arsenal game, like I said. Then they've got Bournemouth, Southampton, Chelsea then, again, probably looking at a benching for that one. And then a really good set of fixtures after that one. He's coming in at 4.7 million. And the reason I wanted to highlight him is, of course, 8 Nuri's fixtures from around game week 18 really do take a sharp decline, and a lot of us will be looking to jump off him because there's not even really any much rotation kind of worth out of him at that point. Obviously, recent performances from him and Wolves as well have been extremely disappointing, and I feel like a lot of us will be looking for other defenders to potentially hop on. And I think Munoz could be one of those players. I remember highlighting him back in pre-season because of the positions he was getting into. If you watch this guy from an eye test perspective, he's phenomenal. Genuinely one of my favourite players to watch. He's getting in positions, again, that he shouldn't be. As you can see here, plenty of big chances created. Good underlying data as well for a defender. Plenty of shots, plenty of those coming inside the box, and of course in target as well, which is something you don't usually see from a defender. Obviously, Palace have had mixed fixtures so far this season, and we've not really got a chance to look at Munoz as an option. But with a decent set on the horizon, I think he could be a great 8 Nuri replacement come game week 18 when their fixtures obviously do fall off. Or, of course, could be a decent one this week if you are looking for a defensive replacement. Of course, just make sure that you have that rotation in game week 17. Right, let's move on to 2 more players. It is going to be Kirkez and it is going to be Evanilson. I'm a big fan of the Bournemouth run coming up. So was the 11-5 model with great clean sheet projections over that period. The projected goal numbers as well were also looking really good. And this is a Bournemouth side that have not only beat Liverpool, Arsenal, and Spurs this season. They're flying. Genuinely, some of the great results they've had this season. Arguably one of the most improved sides. I could see them coming away with 9 points out of that run there. West Ham and Palace at home, great. And United at the moment, I still think Bournemouth are probably in a better shape and could very easily beat them. 2 of my favourite players from the side. Obviously, if you were watching the deadline stream, you saw that I brought in Kirkez. His minutes have been very secure this season. Obviously, has probably been overperforming on his underlying data, but is a very attack-minded left-back. And again, we do want our defenders not only to have their clean sheet potential, because a lot of teams at this level don't really keep too many clean sheets. It's only usually the top sides that are getting those clean sheets. But it is more those attacking returns from these guys like Kirkez that can massively elevate you up the ranks. Of course, again, if you are looking for a Vita replacement or any sort of cheap forward replacement over the next few weeks, Evanilson is probably going to be the man for me. Underlying data is absolutely exceptional. Plenty of shots, all of them coming in the box as well. Unfortunately, he is no longer on penalties, which is a little bit of a blow, considering at the start of the season he was, but obviously missed one. Hasn't got them back off Kluivert yet, who's of course got a great record. Now, I wanted to obviously speak about Kluivert and Semenyo as well, who also could be decent pickups. The only reason I've not included them in today's video is because I want to see how they got to get on against Ipswich. Obviously, Semenyo was playing in a fullback position in the game against Spurs, and maybe that was just a tactical one-off, and maybe in this Ipswich game and the games coming forward with better fixtures, he'll be further forward. But I don't really want to be bringing in a player that is probably going to be playing in a deep wing-back role. It's just not something I'm really about. And then, of course, Kluivert doesn't see out 90 minutes, is sometimes a rotation option, and I think the only reason that a lot of people are looking at him is because he has scored quite well in recent weeks. A lot of people do this. They'll see that a player has scored exceptionally well and go, right, I want to bring that guy in. Remember, these have been penalties. That was the first game in Premier League history where a player has had 3 penalty goals all scored. A first penalty hat-trick as well within the Premier League as well. So it's one of those where, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen again. Maybe, you know, Bournemouth might get lucky over this run, but trying to predict when penalties are going to happen is extremely difficult. Like, it could happen in the United game. You could be benching him. So it's not really something that I want to be buying into. I think if we're getting an asset that's already good value with good underlying data and has penalties is a massive bonus rather than just having the penalty taker themselves. But let me know what you think on that one down in the comment section below. And let's move on. I was doing some digging on the 11FI website over the weekend, and I found this on their website. Again, please go and check their website out. Absolutely amazing. And it is the projected goal involvement numbers for each match day for the top 20 players on this list. I think this is absolutely fantastic and definitely something we are going to be covering off, because I think it's a really, really good metric for captaincy, really, really good metric for seeing which players we need to be bringing in at which points. So yeah, we're going to go through this in most transfer targets videos, or if not, we'll obviously look to include it in other videos as well on the channel. As we can see, probably coming up for this game week, Cole Palmer going to be one of your best captaincy shouts, along with Mohamed Salah and Erling Haaland, all fancy to do quite well on this 11FI model. Obviously, I was speaking about Alexander Isak and the good numbers coming up for him across the board. As you can see, 0.84, an extreme high, and then it kind of tails off for the next two, and then of course in 19 and 20, but still pretty decent projected goal involvements, especially when we're comparing him to somebody like Nicholas Jackson. You would argue with the better fixture in 16, if you was looking between Jackson and Isak right now, you probably would be selecting Isak over that period as well. Haaland, I think for me, is probably going to be a player I'm going to look to bring in around 18, 19 or 20 with an uptick, should I say, in terms of City's fixtures. We saw with the 11FI model as well an uptick in projected goals, so of course that is going to mean an uptick in Haaland's projected points as well. I highlighted that Salah and Liverpool would be decent options as well in match day 18, looking at the projected goal numbers, 3.18 from 11FI. Now we're also seeing that with good numbers for Mohamed Salah as well during that period. Cole Palmer and Bukayo Saka as well also have decent numbers, just pretty much solid across the board as well. I'm just having a quick look, see if there's anybody else on this list that I probably would be absolutely dying or gagging to get into my side. I think Bruno could be a good pick after the Manchester derby, so game week 17. He could be a decent one. Obviously, if you maybe kept Brian Mbeumo for this week, maybe going to bench him against Chelsea. I think that's my plan. And then I might look at Bruno Fernandes as a potential option with decent projected goal numbers there. Right, finishing up today's video. Let's head on over to the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points tool for the next 5 game weeks. There's a clear kind of 3 standout players over the next 5 game weeks. It's Salah, Haaland and Palmer. Like I said, I do think Haaland will start entering the conversation with a big upturn in terms of fixtures for Manchester City around game week 18. We've seen it with the projected goal numbers. We've seen it with the projected goal involvements for players as well. So I reckon around that period, a lot of us are going to be looking at potentially bringing Haaland back in. Salah's an absolute monster and broken. Palmer, steady numbers for Chelsea as well. A drop-off for Bukayo Saka because after 18, it does start to tail away a little bit. And then once we get past this point, there's just a real gulf in terms of the quality and in terms of those predicted points as well. Cunha, I imagine, is only as high as he is because of the next 2 fixtures coming up for Wolves. Same probably goes for Alexander Isak. That's probably why he is higher than both Nicholas Jackson and Watkins over the next few weeks. Mateta could be an interesting option, as could Eze, like I said. If you, of course, can bench them next week and get away with it, maybe something to consider over the next few. Bruno Fernandes was a player I highlighted in the last section as well, in terms of those projected goal numbers looking pretty decent after game week 16 in the Manchester derby, looking pretty good across the board. And then finally, down the bottom, 2 great pickups if you are looking more in terms of the budget option. Of course, João Pedro and Semenyo as well. That was my transfer targets video ahead of game week 16. Of course, if you've got any questions about your side, get them in the comments as I'll try to answer as many as I possibly can. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 16.